Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to our panel. Sally said it, so I won't repeat it. I'm Sandy Davila, the Program Director at Xsolla Partner Network, and I am honored to be sharing the stage with some of my industry favorites. Tess?
Hi, my name is Tess Thormodsgaard, and I am Head of Marketing at BebopBee, a developer for a casual mobile puzzle game, and I've been working with influencers for about 10 years.
I'm Keelyn Lewis. I'm the COO at Cherry Pick Talent. We are an influencer marketing agency focused in the gaming space. I too have been in the industry for almost 10 years, luckily working alongside Tess, Brian, and Sandy.
Awesome. My name is Brian Tall, founder of Digital Creative Artists, a talent agency focusing in mobile gaming. Also been in the industry for nearly a decade, maybe not as long as these three here, but happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, in 2017, they conducted a survey in which they asked kids between the age of 6 and 17 the age-old question, what do you want to be when you grow up? Can people shout some guesses? Hey, spoiler alert, the most desired career, become influencer famous. Over 52% of the respondents said they wanted to become a YouTube content creator or a vlogger. It's not surprising that a few years later, when they conducted a similar survey in 2023, 57% of Gen Zers also responded that they wanted to become an influencer. I think we're onto something here. The influencer market size is massive. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. In 2016, it was valued at $1.7 billion. Last year, it exceeded $20 billion, and this year, it's on track to surpass $25 billion. It turns out that being influencer famous is not only a highly coveted career, but it's also a very effective way to reach gamers. What are your thoughts on that?
Brian?
Sure, I'll go first here. I think it's a fantastic way to reach gamers. Next slide here is going to show you a little bit about the sort of usage and how, I guess, Gen Z and sort of younger folks and the more sophisticated set of consumers use ad block and cookie deletion software and stuff like that. So influencers are a great way to get to a market that, your competitors might not be participating in.
Yeah, no, I agree. In this day and age, in order to reach that audience, audiences want to go to those that they trust, which are influencers. That's where they learn the next favorite games, the favorite, even outside of gaming, right? Just their influence on their daily lives, what they love, what they, what's going to be their next favorite thing. That's who they trust. So yeah, that's the best way to reach them right now.
Yeah, and actually speaking for someone in casual mobile games, I wouldn't even just say gamers, but really reach audiences.
Absolutely.
So influencers are your way to reach audiences, reach a trusted source. In such an effective way. It's going to someone that they trust within a community that they've built a very close-knit relationship with. An influencer isn't just someone that they watch, but it's someone that becomes like they have a family of their following in their community. So it's being able to organically and authentically sort of like integrate into that is a very effective marketing outlet.
I sometimes liken it to the way that foodies turn to Yelp to figure out what their most recent popular restaurant is or the best up-and-coming chef. Mm-hmm. I think that in gaming, oftentimes consumers and gamers turn to Twitch or turn to YouTube and watch their favorite streamers to figure out what's the next rising game or anything that's popular. Brian, I think you had some thoughts on why it's effective in terms of the ad blocker function.
Yeah, totally. We went over it just a little bit recently, but again, sort of what's the most fascinating thing to me there is that you're going to be playing in this sort of space where your competitors are not going to be. I know that a lot of firms rely on UA and a lot of paid media and these sort of platform ads. This is a fantastic way to do something new and fresh.
Awesome. So what we're really here to talk about is what are brands getting wrong when they activate influencers and how to avoid those common mistakes. Oftentimes I feel that, and from my experience working at a network, a publisher, and even an agency or a tech platform, at the core of what brands really fail to do, and their mistakes are really just rooted in what I like to call missing the golden trifecta. The golden trifecta rather is the relationship among the brand, the influencer, and the audience. This is really at the forefront of every stage of your consumer marketing funnel, and is really important to talk about what we can do and what's been happening in the industry as far as influencers.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. There's a few main focal points with avoiding making these common mistakes. The first one is the influencer relationship, like you mentioned, Sandy, and the content you're creating. So oftentimes when you've got a brief, you've got an idea to promote your game, you really need to be able to listen to those influencers and how they feel they can very organically convey this to their audience. They've built this audience in a way that's worked for them. So if you try to fit a circle in a square here and strictly want them to follow a script, it's really not going to come off organically the way that we need it to in order to actually drive that performance and brand sentiment that you're after. You really listen to them and you work together. And that's really what we do at our agency is work very closely with the brand themselves and the influencer to come up with a creative and a content and a larger strategy that really blends with the content they already have going on. You want it to feel very naturally segueing into the content, we'll talk a little bit more about this, but the different types of platforms, but also the different types of deliverables. So are we doing like short form? Are we doing long form? Is it a quick integration? Is it a full video? We really need to look at each individual creator separately and not try to fit everyone in the same one-size-fits-all type campaign. Because they all are unique and they've all built these unique audiences separately in their own unique way. So number one is really to avoid these common mistakes is understanding the content that's going to work best for you. And that comes with a lot of research, education, and listening to your audience, listening to the influencers themselves. The second one is really understanding the terms, which include like usage rights, exclusivity, and additional terms when it comes to working with creators. So oftentimes, or sometimes, brands will immediately think, hey, like I'm paying them for a piece of content, that immediately means it's mine. So I own it in perpetuity, or I get work for hire. Certainly things that we can negotiate, but it's not a given. So it is something that needs to be discussed. Certainly we don't want to be taking that content, blasting it out there, and then an influencer seeing it and being like, what? I had no idea you were doing this. This needs to be negotiated. So it's something that we always talk upfront about. We really look at like, what's the bigger strategy here that we can do, which we certainly always recommend taking that content and going the extra mile. There's so much you can do with that. You can, put it on your website,
Awesome.
but you can also add it into your UA. So you're taking those assets, tossing them in with your other brand assets and testing and seeing what's working well. We have seen with working with a lot of our clients that they've seen the influencer content outperform their brand assets. It's just a fresh take on it, a very different vibe, a little bit more personalized, right? So always something that is worth considering, but it's got to be thought through.
Tess, what were some of your learnings?
I think like especially
working on
coming at
games?
it as a brand, I think what Keelyn was talking about where they really know their audience, they've created their own brand. So if you're too prescriptive as a brand, as a game, as whatever your product you're trying to promote, if you're too prescriptive, it comes off inauthentic and kind of cringy, and no one really wants that. And I think when that
100%.
happens, no one wins, right? If you're too cringy, the audience knows it's fake.
Yeah.
It's not a good video, so like, what are you gonna do with it?
Totally.
The influencer probably doesn't want to work with you again or your product because it's sort of awkward. So I think like if you can let go of the reins a little bit and trust the agency that you're working with, trust the manager, trust the talent, and sort of let them have a little bit of more say of the final product, I think you're going to be more pleased with the outcome and definitely with the results. And similarly, some mistakes I've seen that I try to avoid, who knows though, because agencies can tell me otherwise, but again, like you still want to work with the agency when you're putting your brief together. So, you want to have some talking points. Of course, you are paying someone to talk about your brand for a purpose, so you want to get that through, but being able to work with the agency to say, okay, how do I change this to be, to make sure that I'm getting success and the kind of success that I want.
Brian, what are some of the mistakes?
I've learned really early in my career that brand copy and talking points and really the creative treatment, the final product, even on the agency and sort of management side, we consider ourselves experts. They're never, ever going to be as good as what's going to be provided by the creator.
Totally.
So from my end, I think really guidelines and the approval process, getting that up front is going to be the most important thing of getting a really good brand piece.
And I think it depends on, of course, like your end result too. So if you're talking about putting the content on the influencer's channel, then you want it to speak to their audience. If you're hiring them for like a commercial, then of course it's a little bit different. But this is definitely speaking more of the sort of authentically promoting to their own audience and sort of integrating with them.
Yeah, and to add on to Key's point, I think some of the best content usage I have seen has kind of been in the app stores or sort of the direct platforms where the install happens. that to me is like where the best way to leverage those actual usage rights.
What are your thoughts? I often see brands activate influencers and they do it in a big burst, and you can tell that they invest a lot of budget. And then weeks go by and months go by and I don't hear from them. And I, as a consumer, feel kind of abandoned. Do you think that's a mistake? What's your take on it?
I mean, theoretically, when I've worked with influencers in the past at Seriously for Best Fiends, when we did this a lot, we would do big bursts. You know, we would do it one update all in a short amount of time. It's a little, you know, you could measure it a little bit easier. But you sort of get an idea when you're doing this of which influencers work. You know what content looks good. You know, if you see like within their community a lot of social chatter that they're talking about your product or your game, or the content was good. I think after trying and seeing what works, then you're able to re-engage the talent that feels like a good fit or performance-wise has done well.
I see.
So there's something to, obviously not everyone is going to work, not all the content is going to work. You have to try things out and sort of adjust. But I think there's something when you do find a good fit, whether it's their community or whether it's just a really good talent that fits with your brand and your goals, you want to make sure that when you re-engage with them, there's progression. So like for our game, or any kind of game, you want to show that, they play here, they're at a certain level, they know the game, they know the product, they can speak about it in an intelligent way that shows that they actually know it. And then when you re-engage them, they're further in the game. So you're re-engaging their audience, and you're saying, I'm still playing, I'm now further in it, and then you get to sort of get new audience for anyone that's new to the community, and then you also get to re-engage that audience.
So testing and learning, and actually learning what you get wrong is part of your overall success. So embracing that is something that would be helpful. Let's say I'm an indie developer and I want to activate micro-influencers. Nobody's really gonna watch their content at first. Does that mean that I should probably not tell them to disclose that they're in a partnership, or is that a mistake?
No.
Huge mistake, huge mistake. Did you want to take this one, Key?
Yeah, sure. FTC, any federal regulations are important regardless of the size. Of course, the larger influencers have a little bit more of a spotlight on them. So some do think like, oh, we only have to disclose for those, but the sentiment it should just be across the board is always disclosing. And to be totally frank, there is a benefit to it. On the influencer side, they want to be honest with their audiences. If you're trying to be a little bit sneaky and come off as not an ad when it is, it can come off really wrong to the audiences too and turn them away. But beyond that is just following the actual regulations. We as an agency are very, very sturdy on that, and we're constantly willing and excited to educate our clients on that. So we're ensuring that those are followed, and it's important. It's never something that you take lightly or a gray area. It's mandatory.
Yeah, and I think like speaking about transparency, it's important to, again, for the talent and for their audience to be very transparent, not just with federal regulations where you can really get in trouble, but just in general, like if you're endorsing a product, please play that product. Please know that product. Please like that product if you're going to be endorsing it. Otherwise, again, it's not going to work out. So, you really want to make sure that when, the talent is building up this trust, you're choosing someone that actually wants to work with your brand, and I think that helps, again, everyone win.
Yeah.
That
100%.
golden trifecta.
Yes, I actually like to segue over to what can brands do right when they work with influencers to help stay ahead of the game. I often, when I think of this and I look at brands that do it really well and have had really successful influencer campaigns, I notice that really at the core of what they're doing is they're listening. So I like to refer to this as listen to leverage, right? Coming to the table and approaching influencers not with a set of demands, but rather a spirit of collaboration. What has been your experience with that, and do you agree, Ryan?
Yes, 100%, 100%. And I'll take the opportunity to kind of lean in a little bit more on what usage, what that sort of entails and how that works when you interface with agencies and like managers like myself here. So my favorite kind of time to discuss usage and the content rights is always up front. Mm-hmm. These are licenses that one would have to pay for. But the best thing about getting it up front is you're able to kind of go back to your UA teams or your UA agencies to say that, hey, prepare, I'm going to have this library of content for you that you can kind of chop up and really put anywhere you want. And then we can start testing like we sort of do in traditional UA, but that spin and that little twinge of having influencers in the mix is really the X factor. And me, Key, actually all four of us have great success with integrating influencers into the Google Play Store and the App Store specifically.
Tess, from your experience, if you're launching a game, depending on the genre, does it matter? Should I only look at gaming influencers or should I look outside of that?
Yeah, again, most of my experience has been in this sort of casual mobile space, and we want to go the exact opposite way, really, because if you were to watch a let's play of an hour of match 3 gameplay, that would just be the worst. So I think it's really, for us, it's about finding our target audience and finding people outside, people that wouldn't necessarily call themselves gamers. So finding, maybe
Casual
lifestyle.
gamers, maybe?
You can go that way too. And not to say that you can't do it. I think when we did work with more stereotypical gamers, they would talk about their break from their sort of day job of regular gaming to do casual game experiences. So, I think you can still get gamers into your product, into your game, while still reaching sort of like going after different, I guess a lot of agencies will pitch to me like, oh yeah, we'll go after gamers because you're a game company.
I see.
Well, that's not my audience. I'm looking for lifestyle, family, a lot of, travel, vloggers, things like that you wouldn't necessarily immediately associate. But, you really want to think about the audience first and the talent's audience. So find a more authentic fit with who you're trying to reach.
Brian, I know you work very closely with more of the hardcore gamers. What has that success been like when you do partner them with a publisher, let's say? What kind of content do they create? What do they enjoy the most?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a lot of my experience comes from the title of working on Call of Duty Mobile with their stable of influencers, with you actually, Sandy. Good, really, really great stuff. But really, when you look at your game and what's going to warrant a long-term partnership, it's really, is your game on the more core or hardcore spectrum of the sort of gamer spectrum, right? I know Tess works on a lot of like hyper-casual stuff where long-term partnerships and showing that progression might not make too much sense. But really, in my mind here, it's really assessing what content's already out there and what's going to make a good long-term partnership. So for example, Call of Duty Mobile, there is a huge amount of core influencers there, and if you're able to kind of invest just a little bit into them, you're going to earn so much more back, a huge multiple back, because this is going to be their main sort of title that they make videos and content for every single day. Forging that long-term partnership, getting that sort of direct line of communication is invaluable.
Keelyn, what I've seen to succeed in the industry is when you establish long-term relationships with influencers. I think maybe a lot of people would agree that ideally in the world you would find the next Ninja, the next Dr. Lupo before they became that. Thankfully I had experience working with them before that, so I was able to kind of really support them in that. But is that what you want to go for all the time? The big influencer or early on?
Yeah, great question. I definitely think it's totally dependent on your game. I mean, when you're starting out, fresh, figuring out your marketing plan, you may not have the budgets to go after, the Mr. Beasts or the Ninjas of the world. But what you can go after is really, again, analyzing the creators that are out there that really fit your brand, that really resonate with your game. And they can even be mid-level, right? But you can turn them into an ambassador. So a longer-term partnership where you're looking at them as a spokesperson for your game for 3, 6, 9, a whole year. And we've had longer-term partnerships with that where they build maybe they don't have like the millions of average views that we're looking at for some of the other creators, but they have a highly engaged audience that is really listening to what they have to say, and they're spreading that knowledge to other audiences, and we get more involved. So when we're looking at that, I think that there's two options here. One is a long-term partnership with these ambassador type talent, but we add on to that with saying, let's do bursts with other creators and a test and learn type thing. Because while we love the idea of influencers, at the end of the day, there's a human element here, right? There is a lot of versatility here, but there's also a time to learn. So you're going to have to try a few different verticals. You're going to have to try a few different platforms, a few different formats, short form, long form, live streams, and the different types of game, whether that's mobile, casual, or more RPG, or if it's console and PC. They're all very, very different. So again, looking at the types of creators that would make most sense is a strategy. So it's really diving into those different types and then trialing it, seeing what works. Like Tess said, she's found that we go after those creators again if we've seen like high performance or high engagement. So what the metrics we can look at, of course, is the conversions, the installs, and whatnot. But further to that is like audience sentiment. So seeing what sort of like the audience is engaging with, their comments. Like, are they being like, oh my gosh, this game is wicked? Like
not vanity metrics.
Yeah, not these vanity metrics, which definitely serve their purpose. It's really great to see if you're working with an influencer that has, 5 million, 10 million, 15 million subscribers, but that really doesn't outline what their current popularity is or their current reach, their, actual reach. That's really just showing like over time, this is the audience they've built. And I don't want to discount that because that's incredible still. Yeah. Like kudos to them. It is incredibly hard work. I give these influencers so much credit for what they do, but what we need to look at when we're working with these creators is, where's their audience right now? So, what is their viewership like? How engaged is their audiences? Are they getting 500,000 views on their content, but only 3 likes? Like something's off there, right? So there's a lot to look at, and that's, what we do as experts and as part of my agency is we're really looking at that to provide the rates. So I think it does depend.
And I think, when I would do larger campaigns, again, you have to figure out what works, trial and error, you have to take learnings and adjust and pivot, but I think there's also you're going to get something different from the different kinds of influencers. So the smaller scale, the micro influencers, they will be more engaged, but you're not really getting reach, right? So, I think it's important to sort of have a mix. So you get your awareness, you get the name out there, you get the buzz going when you work with these bigger talents.
Totally.
That's where your reach is coming in, but you're more engaged, with the mid and direct response with the
I want to talk about creative, Brian. So there have been times where I've approached someone like Brian. I said, I have this great idea for your influencer, and this is a creative concept that I think is just going to knock it out.
Yeah.
And then you receive it, you look at it, and you come back with like a total opposite feedback than what I had in mind. What is that like? And for me, it was brutal, but I've learned and I've embraced it. And I'm like, you're right. That totally wouldn't, it's not what I had in mind, because I also have to look at it against the microscope or the lens of what's going on in the world, some current events. So can you talk about that?
100%. So I look at it through 2 lenses. It's really kind of, number 1, it's going to be the format. Then number 2, it's what is that final creative treatment? I think you were talking a little bit about the creative treatment there. And when you receive something from the brand that might not be too great of a fit, this is why I love these 2. They kind of help us translate that message up on saying like, hey, this might be a one-size-fits-all, or maybe something that's a little more boilerplate that is sent out at scale. Let us help you kind of fine-tune that for maximum performance. So number 1, creative treatment, if we need a little help on that, generally I like to step in and kind of guide from that point on. Number 2, when it comes down to the formats, long form, short form, integration, full-on video, streams, socials, video, anything, right? Generally, again, at the top level, when you're deploying at scale, it is kind of a one-size-fits-all. But when that line item hits me, I would like to kind of advise a lot of my clients of like, hey, let's try this, or historically, this has been a lot more effective. So, for example, if you have X amount of dollars and you're coming in for a dedicated video, I might tell you that, hey, let's do 2 integrations spaced out 2 to 3 weeks, and that's going to give you way more performance and likely what you're actually looking for than what you kind of just brought to me. So those 2 pieces, managers, agency folks, really, really help you through that process.
How often do you think brands should lean into trends? Is it always? Is it only when it's relevant? What is that part? What do you think?
Yeah, real quickly on that one. I think content volume is super important, right? So if you have a YouTuber that's doing 5 videos a week, I think trending stuff is super appropriate.
Hashtags.
But if you got someone who does super highly produced videos, maybe 1 video every 3 weeks, I would advise staying away from trends.
Right.
What do you think?
Totally agree.
It depends on your budget, depends on like how much you can put out, what you're going for, how you're using the content. So I would say it depends on what's going on and where your budget lies.
Thank you. So I want to make sure we have enough time for anyone to ask questions. But before we do, quickly, can you share maybe one of your favorite campaigns that you've done in the past?
I'll go first, I guess. Okay, so yesterday we talked about, during rehearsal, we talked about this YouTube trending. Sandy and I, we did a brand campaign where we hit #1 YouTube trending in a lot of English-speaking countries. So for a brand video, that's super impressive. But one thing I forgot between us was we actually launched the first creator skin inside of the Call of Duty mobile franchise, Ferg.
That was
our creator. Oh my
God. That was us, 1 year.
Kudos.
A lot of push-pull to sort of really win over, executives, finance, accounting teams to be like, hey, this does make sense.
Yeah.
And then, we should be talking about it, but several months later, they went ahead and did the same thing with the mainline con product.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, you guys were the trailblazers, though. You got to get credit there. It's hard to nail one because, luckily I've been in this industry so long and there's so many cool partnerships we've done. But I'm going to just name 2 really quickly. One is just an encapsulating that we have the opportunity to work with Epic Games a lot on their influencer program, and it's incredible. They're very innovative and aren't just looking at gamers. They also look beyond that to drive in new audiences. And of course, they're bringing in various different IPs that really cater to different crowds. So just from being able to work with VFX creators to artists to athletes, lifestyle creators across all these platforms, it's been really cool to be able to activate. We've seen some crazy videos go viral. One's hit 153 million views.
Amazing.
Organically, which is nuts. And then the second is we had the opportunity to work with Mr. Beast to bring a skin in game with a mobile game from Outfit 7 for My Talking Tom last year. And there was a charity element to it too, which was really, really cool. So really proud about that.
Yeah, again, it's hard to pick one, but I think there's one where we did a in-game scavenger hunt and brought in sort of like talent logos to the game. So I think what made it so fun was there was a component of working with so many parties on a very tight schedule and working with the product team to really bring in mass awareness to the game and bring in a spike of DAU and a lot of engagement just with the different influencers and the talent, their audiences, and then working with the product was awesome.
Thanks for sharing. I'll share mine very quickly. I gotta say, one of the highlights for me in the spirit of the Call of Duty Warzone mobile launch week, shout out to the team that's working on that still, when we actually worked together and we announced the pre-registration, and one of the influencers that we work with saw himself in the stream for Call of Duty Next and went crazy because it helped generate the hype early on. So that's it. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining this panel. And then we want to make sure that we have time for some questions, Sally.
Yeah.
If anybody does have a question, oh, he's already in. Brilliant. There's a mic at the front.
The lights are very bright.
Hello.
Hello.
Good? All right, cool. Bet. All right, yeah, we lit. So, yeah, what's up, y'all? So I'm Hip Hop Game on High 97, and I know a lot about the influencer stuff that y'all do. So, like, I actually have two questions.
Sure.
So one question is, do y'all work with influencers that's small that y'all can actually build up, but they are great but need to be seen? Because the reason why I'm asking that is because a lot of times, a lot of influencers that I'm aware of, like companies, they only work with people that's already big to make them look good.
Yeah.
Versus them being a company that can take somebody from nowhere and bring them up somewhere because they got things going on and they really good at what they do. So that's the first question. Okay. Yeah, so I'll let any one of y'all can take it.
I'll answer that quickly. I mean, this is back in the day when I was at Best Fiends, but I think for us it was really about finding the right audience. And I think as brands, I mean, now I think brands are more comfortable with this, but there's something about, like brands wanting to stay sort of like PC, if you will. So like maybe not wanting to work with talent that were a little bit more vulgar, or would say curse words, or LGBTQ+, like all of these things that weren't really done as much. And for us, it was like, no, they've built up their audience by being who they are. They're building up their brand. And it doesn't really matter their audience. I mean, obviously we don't want them to have 10 followers, but building up their brand, we know who they are. They're speaking to a very specific audience. And if your audience is what I'm looking for, great. If you like my product, if you're authentic by endorsing it, then like, fantastic. I think we were the first one to sponsor Shane Dawson, and it was one of the best integrations. It was amazing. But like I had to ask him not to say a very bad word in the video. Like where it's like, you can be vulgar, but don't be that vulgar.
What was your second question?
Yeah, so and the second question is, when y'all looking for different influencers, do y'all also look for influencers that can influence not just audiences, but also the business behind the scenes? The reason I'm asking that is because just relating to like myself, like I'm a partner with AMD, I'm a partner with Chase Bank, New York Stock Exchange, like I do a lot of stuff already. Congrats. But the thing is, the influence that I got is one thing in terms of community, but on the back end, there's a lot of business that I've been able to like develop alongside these companies that they didn't even understand that internally. So when y'all picking certain influencers, do y'all think about only the community, or do y'all think about the business on the back end that this influencer can be valuable to at the same time?
I mean, I think it depends on what your goal is at the time. So like if your goal to do an influencer campaign is just for a launch of a product, then you're going to be going for that community. But if you're trying to do something like a B2B thing, or you're trying to like get your company listed or something, then you might do a different kind of campaign. So I think it really depends on what your goal is at the time, and again, like where your business.
Yeah, I think there is on the agency side too. I think there is for sure. If there's opportunities that we could work together on, And
I think like
we could talk more after.
We'll talk more after.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you for the question.
Oh wow, thank you.
so much.
I love the energy.
Hello.
Hello. So you guys were talking earlier about the golden trifecta, right? And how the relationship between the product and the influencer, etc. Like in practice, when you have a good product, it's very rarely that an influencer says, oh, I don't really fit with your product, unless they're like super away from it. They usually, like it and they want to get a contract going. So you have your expectations, right, as to what the relationship's going to be like,
Right.
and what they're going to project.
Yes.
Once you start a contract and they go out there and they kind of underperform your expectations, but everybody now knows that you're working with them. Sometimes you kind of get stuck like, okay, this is not working out the way I wanted, but then if I cancel this contract, it's also going to look weird. Like, why did this person stop working with this brand? So you're kind of stuck in this like mediocre relationship. What do you suggest in those types of?
Well, I think it would also be like, I probably wouldn't do a long-term like ambassadorship before you test them.
You gotta
make
try
sure it
before you
works.
buy a little
Yeah,
bit
exactly.
more
Like I won't
long-term,
do a long-term without understanding like, are they performing? Is it a right fit for the brand? Do I like working with them? I think so much is, are they delivering on time? Are they like upholding the contract? So much of it is that, I think, not just with influencers, but in business in general.
Yes.
So like, if you like working with them, if they're delivering and they fit your brand, I think that's important. So definitely test before you do anything.
So like a
long-term.
2-week
And
test.
also
Yes,
like,
I would
yeah.
suggest having a more flexible contract out the gate.
And
that could help potentially renew if they do well.
Right. Also, like, I've had people say, "Oh no, that's not for me." Like, and I'm happy they
That's
do that.
okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Like, people that say they're not gamers, for example, wouldn't want to promote a mobile game, and that's great. If you don't want to for any reason, please don't. Like, you're saving all of us.
And there are other ways that you can pivot, and we'd be happy to.
Yeah, if you have a
chat with
specific
you more.
scenario, we could have talked about that after this too, because I know, sorry, we're running out of
Great
time.
question. Yeah, so far.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Hey everyone. Thanks for
one
the
more
great
question.
panel.
One more question.
All right, great.
Thank you.
So I have a bit of a chicken and egg problem when I do paid influencer marketing. The engagement kind of drops.
Okay.
Yes.
And the influencers tend to like not care as much about the content they put out.
I see.
And that's been my experience so far. I don't know if that's generally the case. So I don't know how to navigate that. It's like I'm okay paying for the content, but it ends up being lower engagement and kind of lower quality. So it kind of like
Paid
doesn't
versus like getting.
organic. So
Like organic.
Like there is. Yeah.
Interesting. I would say it might be a factor of the influencer themselves, because they should be putting in the same amount of effort as their organic content to naturally weave that in. You're paying for it to be on their channel, correct?
yeah.
Yeah.
And a little bit of context there.
Yeah.
When they market as like paid partnerships,
Like
especially
this
on
is an ad
TikTok
or whatever, yeah.
or like hashtag ad. And back to your point around like the audience trust factor, I feel
Yeah.
like they actually kind of push that off or
Yeah, and then
write
you
it
run
off
into-
as like a
yeah, you're running into algorithms where
might
TikTok's
even-
not favoring it if you have hashtag ads,
right.
added
yeah.
things like that.
How do you navigate that?
You
Yeah.
might consider a different channel mix, or again, like working with someone like this that actually can come at it with like a more strategic approach of like how often, what kind of like
What
helping
time?
formulate.
What else is being uploaded when your content is being uploaded?
Maybe TikTok isn't the place for your product. Like maybe it's a YouTube or something else.
Yeah.
It's a great question, and it's not uncommon. But we are definitely would love to talk to you.
Yeah, we talked about this too. Sorry, sorry, we're like 0 seconds.
You're being told it's time.
Oh no, it's Alex.
We'll
go.
Yeah, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you
you
so
have.
much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.